listens to Inks and Issues, a podcast where we do in-depth discussions on a single comic book. I am your host, Jonah Gregory. With me, as always, my co-host, Kieran Bennett.
Hi, my name's Kieran, and when Batman was interrogating me, he kissed me on the cheek, and I've never recovered.
Saucy. And our special guest returning for part 2 of this discussion, Brittany Gregory. Welcome back.
Hi.
Wow. I love it. And I love you.
The dulcet tones.
So yes, we are back to discuss the second half of the Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale collaboration, Batman, The Long Halloween, one of the classics, I would say, of Batman comic books. Mm-hmm. I would assume pretty well regarded still to this day. And we covered the first half last time. So to catch people up, if you've forgotten what happened so far, there is a holiday killer on the loose. Someone who has killed members of the mob every single holiday. I mean, not every holiday, let's be real. Every major holiday, and left behind a .22 caliber gun that's taped up on the handle and has the serial number filed off, and also a little something extra, which is something that represents that holiday. And Batman, Harvey Dent, and Gordon have all teamed up to try and crack the case, and it's been half a year, and they have so far failed to do anything.
They are not very good at this.
So yeah, this is, it's kind of an interesting, it's hard to place in a timeline of Batman because it's kind of like early Batman type of stuff. Cause it's like, there's no Robin and there is still a bunch of mobsters that kind of rule the city, but there's already the Joker and Catwoman and Poison Ivy and Solomon Grundy. And, there's all these, characters.
Yeah, and it's really weird that, Batman hasn't started shaving yet and his voice sometimes cracks. It's really odd.
Yeah. So finding where it would fall in the timeline is.
Well, it's definitely early days Batman because Carmine is still involved.
Right.
And
Robin
are
is
still involved.
Introduced in the sequel book.
Yes.
So that comes up soon. So, where we left off was, chapter 7 was the last one we talked about, which was, a good catch-up point because it is, the Riddler working with the mob to try and piece together all the clues while simultaneously Batman is working to piece together all the clues. So you get all their speculation of who could possibly be the killer and how that would have worked for the various death scenes that you've seen throughout the book so far, which we figured was a pretty good stopping point. So, to jump right in, unless you guys have something else to add before we get going.
No.
Nah.
No? Okay, cool. So, chapter 8 is Mother's Day, and we see Batman talking to the Calendar Man, who they've talked to before a few times because of the themed killings that are on specific days. They are hoping that the Calendar Man can give them some clues as to how to stop this guy or who it is. And one thing was interesting, and it's like kind of a red herring, but maybe not. And they're constantly saying like, oh, is he the killer or is she the killer? We don't actually know because it's a .22, which is a gun like perfect for a woman because it's lightweight and you can carry it in your purse. I mean, I don't think they say that explicitly, but they pretty much do.
It's 70% less gun than normal.
Yeah. Some of the stuff that the .22 is able to puncture and then still kill a bunch of people. I'm not a gun guy, but from what I've seen and read about .22s, they're pretty wimpy comparatively. So
I feel like the .22 is not necessarily the murder weapon every time. I feel like it's something that's left behind in some. I mean, I have to assume for the sake of logical consistency, the killer is not using a .22 every single time because there are some murders that take place where the holiday killer shoots down a chandelier,
right? Or it looks like machine gun. Yeah, I was going to say it's machine gun fire. They just leave that gun behind every time, which, So as he's talking to the Calendar Man, this guard runs in and is like, oh, there's been an escape, Batman, you got to help us. And he's like, oh, no, the terror in this guy's voice could only mean one thing. Jonathan Crane, who is the Scarecrow, as we all know. And he apparently, which I did not know this about his backstory, strangled his mother on Mother's Day, which is pretty messed up. I didn't know if that's part of the lore normally, but it makes him a much worse person than I ever suspected.
Jonathan Crane's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
He is very, very screwed up.
And we get, again, that what I was kind of talking about last time, when it's one of the villains from the Rogues Gallery, you kind of get almost like a different palette, and it's like a little more otherworldly. So we see this really cool splash page of the Scarecrow, like on horseback in his full costume again. And the horse is like, up in the, bucking up in the air, rearing up in the air. I know what horses are. And Batman, immediately catches,
it's laying eggs right now.
Yes, it's, that's what horses do. I mean, you got to give them their space. He, catches the horse, immediately tackles the Scarecrow off the back of it, and it turns out it's actually a Scarecrow. It's not Jonathan Crane at all.
It's a straw man the whole time.
Oh, straw man arguments against, anyway, Gordon once again tries to go to talk to Bruce, and Alfred is like, I almost called him Pennyworth. I've done that on other Batman books too, where I'm like, Pennyworth, everyone's favorite character. So Alfred once again is just like, oh, he's such a busy guy, that, he's trying to get information, but can't really get much out of him. Basically at this point, they're trying to find out if there's a connection between the Waynes and the Falcone family, because they're like, was there any time where the parents interacted, or, like Gordon has suspicions that there's some deeper seated connections, even if Bruce won't talk about it. Meanwhile, over at Gotham River Bridge, Sophia, who is the Falcone daughter who has Gigante, is that how you pronounce that? It's in her name. Because she's like 8 feet tall, and it might as well be like Big Barda at this point, because she's picking people up by the neck and hanging them over the side so that they'll talk. And, she's trying to get information on, where the guns were purchased, the 22s, because they're always the same, make and model of gun with the serial number filed off. And she finds out that there's a, place in Chinatown, Chong's tea house, that is a front for other mobster types who are not part of the Falcones, who manufacture custom weapons and sell, lots of illegal guns back when there were such a thing, and grenades and machetes and things like that. So she shows up, and it switches to the black and white that we keep seeing every time the Holiday Killer strikes. But when she gets there, she finds a Mother's Day flower basket along with one of the 22s, and finds that the proprietor has been shot down. So again, she's arrived slightly too late to accomplish her task, because the Holiday Killer keeps beating her to the punch. So back in everyone's favorite place, Crime Alley, which is actually, what is it?
Park
Row. Yeah. So it's got a real name, but the graffiti covering it makes it a little hard to read. But Bruce Wayne is doing his normal wanting to leave a rose thing, but as he's there, Gordon shows up, and he sees Gordon as his parents' killer, who wanted the pearls. We also find out from his inner monologue that the thing that the people that killed his parents wanted were his mom's pearls, which he insisted she wear, even though they were just going to the movies, because he wanted to make it special. Because she's like, oh, it's for special occasions. And he's like, couldn't we make tonight special? So it's like, oh, this is one of the reasons Batman is so messed up in the head, because he blames himself because he made her wear the pearls, and that's what they wanted to steal. So yeah, it's a wrinkle to that story that I didn't remember being part of his origin at least in this version. But as we see, the fear gas has gotten to him, because he's seeing hallucinations as Gordon as the killer. He keeps seeing himself as his younger self, running away scared, and they kind of chase him down and find him crying at his mother's grave. So it's a very sad, bittersweet issue. I really enjoyed it, but it actually made me feel a lot more for Bruce as a character than I normally would. Like, normally the Bruce side of him feels very flat to me. Because it's always just this act that he's putting on, and he's not really himself when he's not Batman. And like, oh, you actually see like the deep hurt and regret and guilt that Bruce Wayne feels, and this is why he's doing this. So I really liked this one. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I feel like in the same way as that they managed to really kind of get the Joker. In this issue, they really kind of get the character of not just Batman, but also Bruce Wayne. In that kind of like at his core, like at his center, he is a man who possesses a lot of guilt and a huge amount of grief and sorrow over the death of his parents. And, you know, he is for all his you know, posturing as a big, bad, tough detective, taking down criminals and punching mobsters and stuff. He's an orphan. He was orphaned at a young age, and he is, you know, still carrying around all this sadness. And he's you know, he's a frightened boy in a man's body. And I think when writers really managed to like pin onto that fact that he carries all of this baggage around with him, then I think it makes everything about the story better. Yeah. So this is a really good issue.
I also like at the very end when they come across him, you know, they shine the light from the helicopter on him, and he's clutching her gravestone and crying. The exaggeration of how big it looms over him is like, it's a counterpoint to like everything, where it just like exemplifies like his feelings, because that isn't how big that gravestone normally is, but it's showing how he feels small, like a child would, and gripping onto this gigantic to him thing that looms over him every day of his life. So just emphasizes that fact. Because I was like, dang, that's one big headstone. But then, you know, I have other pictures within the issues, like the cover pages, where it's him as a child in front of it, and that is more representative of his actual size.
Right. Like if he were standing in that other picture as a child, he'd be about as tall as it.
Whereas, you know, like the next one for the Father's Day, the cover is Batman standing next to his dad's grave, and unless they made his mother's gigantic for some reason, clearly it's a normal sized gravestone. It's just emphasizing his own feelings and how that his mother's death looms over him every day.
Sorry, Bruce, you don't get an inheritance. We spent it all on your mother's gravestone.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I thought this was a really, really good issue, and it, I feel like if anyone's going to be writing any kind of like Bruce Wayne Batman stories, you have to be like, hey, you actually have to read this issue first. Right. Before you go and write, because it's such a good treatment of kind of like the core of Bruce Wayne.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's 2018, so all people care about now is seeing Batpeen. So
that's fair. I mean, that's also pretty. That's pretty key.
Well, you know, that happens.
All right, that'll take us into issue 9, Father's Day. So from Mother's Day to Father's Day, and so basically, it is Bruce Wayne recounting his a night from his past, where the father of Carmine Falcone comes to Thomas Wayne, and he's like, look what they've done to my boy. You know, you gotta help him. And he's like, yep, my dad, he was a doctor, and he would never turn anyone away.
So how is he a surgeon in the United States of America, I guess is my question.
Oh, I mean, to be fair, he was shot later, so, you know.
True.
To be fair, it was 1920s. You could do whatever you wanted.
I was going to say, the guy didn't show him his insurance card first or anything. I also appreciate, before we get too far, that Thomas Wayne just looks like Burt Reynolds in this issue.
Thomas Wayne is...
He's got the stash and the chin, the jawline, you know. It's very good.
I wasn't going to say anything insightful. I was literally going to say he's a piece.
Okay.
Well, he is a piece. I mean, that's where Bruce gets it from. No, I just love it because it's a very clear establishment of what Carmine was talking about at the beginning, how their family has a connection and, they owe the Waynes, no matter what, because of the family. And it's literally because he saved his life. If it weren't for Thomas Wayne, Carmine would be dead. And it's as simple as that. So it's like, this is clearly the very clear connection between the two families.
Yeah. And so we then go to a trial where everyone's favorite character, Pennyworth, is currently on trial with Dent, who is basically demanding an explanation about the prior events of why did Thomas Wayne help the son of a very well-known gangster? Why did he not report any of these crimes? And Alfred basically turns around and he's like, maybe he did. Gotham City is soups corrupt. Yeah. And need I remind you, he and his wife were killed in an alleyway and their murderer was never found. And he gets on a microphone and he drops it on the floor.
And then it's found in contempt. But, it was worth it.
But it was totally worth it.
I just love his wording because it is Alfred. He's like, they were rife with graft.
Oh, yeah.
It's so great.
And so then we get Moroni talking to Big Lou Moroni, who's the former head of the Moroni crime family, and also
Marlon Brando.
And also Marlon Brando, yes, essentially. And who's the father of Sal Moroni. And so they're basically kind of like discussing like, what are you gonna do about Holiday? What are you gonna do about Carmine? And his dad is like, This is about Falcone. You got to get him before he gets you. You got to take the fight to him. And that's all he has to say because goes black and white. Pow, pow, pow. Big Lou, Moroni's dad, is taken down and a box with a tie in it is left behind.
Those guard dogs fell down on the job.
Yeah, I know. They really suck. And so we then get a little scene. It's like which I found really sad. Because Sophia lets her father know that the grand jury acquitted Bruce Wayne in about a minute and a half, and she then gives him a tie for Father's Day, and he's just like, I appreciate the gesture, and then just leaves. And she looks very, very sad. I felt really bad for her. Even though she is literally a murderer, I still felt really bad for her. Mm-hmm.
Maybe she wouldn't be a murderer if her dad had shown her some love and hadn't been a mobster. If those two things had happened, she might not be.
When she crushes people's heads.
Well, she does have a skill.
I love that it shows it's Catwoman that is watching them through binoculars the whole time.
It's almost like she has a connection.
Almost.
Interesting. So we get kind of like, it's Father's Day, so Gordon goes home and he gets a tie from his son, and it's got his son's handprints on it. It's the best Father's Day present he could ever get.
It's super adorable.
It's very, very cute.
Mm-hmm. I like that he immediately puts it on. He takes off the tie he's been wearing all day, at the end of the day, and puts on this brand new tie. Because he's like, I'm going to wear it today, of course.
That's because Jim Gordon is a good dad.
Yeah.
Jim Gordon's the best dad. I wish we all had dads like Jim Gordon.
I wish Jim Gordon was everyone's dad.
Be the best dad.
He'd be the best dad.
That's it. I've decided it. We're going to start saying Jim Gordon's my dad.
Jim Gordon is my dad. All right. So then we get Harvey, who says that he went to go and see his dad, who is unfortunately, in his words, still crazy as ever. But his dad did give him a coin. Interesting. And so basically he's bitching about how Bruce Wayne got off so easily, and he's like, there's no justice in the world. It's like a flipped coin. Weird. Sure that won't come back. And so in the meantime, Carmine has hired the Mad Hatter and Scarecrow to achieve some unknown task for him at the Gotham City Bank Depository. What exactly that is, we do not know just yet. But
also,
it does
finally get that team up of those two that we've all been asking for.
I love how their own insanity is just them yelling at each other. It's great.
Yeah.
Because you got Scarecrow singing Patty Cake, Baker's Man, and then you got Hatter being like, we want more tea. You can always have more. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's real good. But it does confirm that Carmine is the one behind many of the recent breakouts from Arkham Asylum. And so we get probably one of my favorite parts of the whole comic where Bruce is kind of ruminating on his father, and how, like, you know, if his dad hadn't saved Carmine Falcone's life, how different would Gotham City be? And, you know, he's like, I can't help but wondering what might have happened if, and Alfred says, it would be as fruitless as my wondering had I been a different sort of father to you, how better your life might have been. And then we get Bruce sitting on the stairs, looking up at Alfred, saying, I just miss him, Alfred. Is that so wrong? And Alfred just puts his hand on her shoulder and says, no, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And then at the very end of the issue, Moroni comes to Dent and says, you know, we both want a piece of Falcone. It's time we find out what we can do with each other. But I think the more important part is Bruce sitting on the stairs, confessing to Alfred. It's so emotional. It's so good.
Well, that spot on the stairs, too, is where he sat and watched his father work on Carmine.
Yeah.
Which he says is the first time he ever saw his father actually work. Like, perform a surgery. So, that's like, you know, clearly a throwback to that, of him remembering specifically that event.
Yeah, so what you guys think of this issue?
Yeah, I, again, enjoyed the pacing of this book overall has been very good. And I guess, like, I hadn't read it in years, so the kind of emotional gut punches that have come with the Mother's and Father's Day issues were, like, not exactly what I was expecting, but are incredibly well done. Having lost a father, I can say that it does mess with you quite a bit. So I was an adult, but still, I can't even imagine having lost both parents at such a young age. It's like, that's really gotta, you know, change the person you would have become, obviously. So I think it's done incredibly well. And Alfred kind of blaming himself for, like, Bruce's life being so hard with this responsibility he feels like as a dad, I can be like, I can sympathize with that as well, where you're like, am I making the right decisions? Am I raising these kids right? Like, it was really interesting to me personally to be able to kind of see it from both sides now, whereas the last time I read it, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So, too, with Moroni, when he goes into the office, one of the things I like is, first, he's covered in his father's blood as he stands there in front of Dent. He also has in his hand the tie that was left by the Holiday Killer. Mm-hmm. That is the tie that was left, and he's holding it in his hand, and he's like, I'm done. It
is a very good issue. I think this is also kind of when it starts breaking away from the normal formula of a bunch of stuff happens and then the Holiday Killer strikes. In that the murder takes place pretty close to the start of the issue. So it is a really, really good issue. I really enjoy it.
Okay, Brittany, do you want to take the next one?
Sure. So this one is Chapter 10, Independence Day.
Happy birthday, America.
Yay! So it starts out, this one does, with our black and white. Right away. It just... You want some murder? Here's some murder. So it starts out with a shot of Gotham City Corner, and this is the corner that was inspired by Will Eisner. And it's just him looking at somebody and, like, clearly recognizing whoever it is, being shot and then, like, falling off the pier. And then the next page is a 2-page spread, and it's all the fireworks in color, and then the rest of it in black and white with the coroner sitting on a dock in Gotham.
It's a beautiful double-page spread, I have to say.
It is. It's a very nice double-page
It's a very good murder. I mean, double-page.
I mean, the fireworks are cool. You've got the city skyline in the background. You have the bridge that he's directly under, but the way it swoops across the page so you get to see the other half of it is really cool. It's a very, very good page, if I do say so myself.
If I do say so myself.
Yeah. So the next is it's Bruce, and he's spending 4th of July with Selena Kyle. And he's talking about, she asks him why he even stays in Gotham City. I mean, because clearly he doesn't have to. He could go anywhere he wants in the world. And he's just saying after his parents died, he left, and then he was drawn back because he made a promise to them. And then she asks, after his episode with Poison Ivy and Harvey Dent, she's like, what would it take for you to let go, to leave? Because basically she's like, she wants him to go with her. Because she even says that. She's like, I know places, Bruce, we could do things together.
Ooh.
And
the studio audience goes, woo!
So then they have a passionate kiss, and she's like, yeah, like that.
Yeah, like that, but more.
Like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's the two of them, but then, of course, there's the bat signal. So, and then the next is he's up on the rooftops, and there's Dent. And Dent is flipping his coin. That's his first, he's playing with the coin. And Dent wants to talk. So, Dent asks him if he remembers the deal they made, and Batman's like, of course I do. Do you?
Oh,
and
man.
He admits he made a mistake going after Bruce. And he says that, Moroni's going to testify, and he's going to take some time and get out of the city for a little while. And then if he asks about, Batman asks about Holiday, and that's when Jim comes up and informs them that they struck again. And that this time it's the civilian, it's the coroner. And then it shoots over to the prison where Moroni is in jail, and he gets a visitor, and it is none other than Sophia. Mm. And so, he goes up to talk to her, and he's like, does your father know you're here? And she's like, psh, I don't have to tell him anything. And so then they have a nice makeout session, and so clearly they have a thing going. And she lets him know that Carmine knows that it's Dent who got them all into this mess. And that if, without Dent, everybody would lay off. So they're like, you're going to do right by us, Sal, right?
Hey, buddy, pal.
Buddy, pal.
Guy we've been giving hundreds and hundreds of dollars to for the last God knows how long.
You're going to do right by us, as we make out session this. How does she get her head through the bars?
It's a great question.
That's actually a very good question.
If she can get her head through the bars, I think I could fit my entire body.
She just needs to be able to smooch, I think, so.
I know, but they clearly show her head through the bars. I gotta question that. I mean, it's a cool shot. Don't get me wrong. I gotta question that. How well that would actually work. So then it cuts over to Barbara and Gilda, and they're talking in, Jim and Barb's home, and they're asking, why they stay and all that. And they say it's because of the work. And she's like, well, it's like digging into hell. And she talks about how when Dent first started, they called him Apollo, and he was handsome. He couldn't do anything wrong. But now this case is just basically eating him from the inside out. And he's changing. And she's like, when will I ever get my Harvey back? So then it flashes back over to Batman and Gordon, and they're on the dock, and the items left is a Statue of Liberty holding a American flag.
Happy birthday, America.
Yeah, and so Batman notices these are 2 close-range shots to take out the coroner, so he assumes that they have to get up close, which implies that the killer knows their victims to be able to get that close to them without them getting upset or, freaking out. So, which of course, then Gordon's like, yeah, well, you can get close to anybody, and nobody ever notices.
It's like, yeah, but I hate guns, so it's not me.
It's not Batman.
Yeah, but I didn't do it. And you gotta believe me.
So then he asks, why the coroner, all of them have been Falcone related somehow, even the ones that were Moroni. I mean, that's all comes back to Falcone eventually. And he asks, can anybody account for the whereabouts of Harvey Dent at the time of the killings? So Batman's already clearly suspecting Harvey, and has very strong suspicions to the point where he's willing to basically admit as much to Jim. And then all these fireworks are going off in the background, and Gordon comments that that's really odd because all of the city's fireworks were set off earlier, so there shouldn't be any more going off. And he's like, probably just some kids, right? And he turns around, Batman's just gone. And sure enough, you see these guards at one of the banks at the depository being like, I love fireworks. And they're like, oh, they're so pretty. And sure enough, it's not fireworks. It's stuff falling from the sky, and a giant rocket, totally takes out the doors to the depository. And out come, the Scarecrow and Mad Hatter, the greatest team-up ever. Clearly. Because they love each other so much.
That classic team-up.
Classic team-up. And they are clearly robbing the depository. They're getting all the money back. And, he makes a comment, a blackbird coming down, Scarecrow does, and sure enough, Batman just, lands on their heads. And I love this spread, because you got Batman landing, he's grabbing Scarecrow, but Mad Hatter's face...
Oh my, it's so good.
It's amazing. He's got the bug eyes, his hat's fallen off, he's just, freaking out. It's fantastic. It's did they really think that Batman wasn't going to show up? You'd think they'd be prepared for this eventuality.
Yeah. They're surprised when he's here. They're like, oh my gosh, quickly, let's mobilize and try. And it's obviously he was going to show up.
It's come on, you guys should have known he was going to show up. So, yeah. So he's taking out Scarecrow and he's taking out Mad Hatter, and Catwoman shows up and she totally helps him take out Mad Hatter, which is pretty great. And she just says, oh, my paws and whiskers. And she says it's the only line from Alice that she can remember.
And what a line.
What a line. It's perfect for her. I'm just saying. And so Batman comments that she's been following him because, of course, he knows that she's been there the whole time. And then she's like, I like fireworks and I like the Cheshire Cat. And then she's like, and I like all the money that's just sitting around here. So he comments Moroni orchestrated it all. And, she's like, it's your loss. And she leaves him. And then he said, no, it's the price of independence. And it's just a final shot of him. He's standing in their horse and carriage, and Mad Hatter and Scarecrow are just laying on the ground, whispering to themselves madness and fears.
Classic them.
There's the giant bags of money with dollar signs, which is my favorite thing in this issue.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, this one was a little slower. I thought it's setting up what's going to be happening with Harvey more than anything. That was the main takeaway. The other stuff was it's fine, but it's not as interesting as any of the other villains that he's been fighting throughout the book so far.
Yeah.
Well, Mad Hatter and Scarecrow are pretty B-grade villains. Let's be honest. Hatter is a C or D grade villain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Scarecrow is a B grade.
The Scarecrow can be a B tier villain in the right hands, but in the wrong hands, he can be a, D.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this one before we move on?
Just that I love the Scarecrow Mad Hatter because it's it doesn't make any sense. Those two would never work together. Except for that they're getting fat stacks of cash out of it. And it's it clearly doesn't work great because they're just arguing the whole time with their own madness. Because they're each reciting nursery rhymes and stuff to each other, and they don't mesh at all. And it's great.
To be fair, Carmine Falcone was the one who arranged this team up. And I feel he doesn't really know anything about the Rogues Gallery other than, they're quote-unquote freaks, and he just wants to kind of use them. So I don't think he really knows or cares that they don't work well together.
It's they're quirky, these guys.
It's they're for my pay rate.
Yeah. I can't afford any of the good ones.
Right.
They're for the right pay
Well, they did burn all that money, so he's a little strapped right now.
Oh, it's true that.
Oh, yeah, true.
All right, so that's going to roll us into Chapter 11, Roman Holiday. And this opens with Harvey's wife, Gilda, finding the gun in the basement. It's one of the 22s. It has the taped up handle, serial number filed off, and she's like, isn't this the gun the holiday killer? And he's like, it's evidence. I'm the district attorney. It's normal for me to take evidence home. Wink, wink.
And not super illegal.
Yeah, not super illegal and suspicious. Okay, gotta go. I have a case.
Bye.
And it's incredibly awkward. And he's like, I do this all the time. And as he leaves, she's just like, it's a cool shot of her just standing in the dark going, all the time? Like, what? Very confused. Like, what the heck is he talking about? Like, how long have they been married? And this has never come up before. So Batman goes to shake down this kind of low-life bar, you know, the traditional place where scum and villainy hang out, because he was trying to find the Riddler. And there's a pretty interesting, I thought, fight where he's kind of got this internal monologue after this thug / bartender's like, I thought you only came out at night. And he even like commenting to himself, like, this intimidation doesn't work as well when it's like bright out, because the Batman costume, if you're thinking about it, would look kind of silly in a like well-lit situation versus, you know, a dark alley where he's pummeling like a crook, you know. And I did it like the scene where the huge guy like swings the bat at him and he just catches it. I thought that was pretty cool. So
catches it and shoves it back into his face,
into his mouth, breaking all his teeth, because you don't hit Batman with a bat. Come on.
And also, just fun fact: Bruce Wayne owns stocks in dentists.
Well, it's all coming together.
It's all coming together. It's all coming up, Bruce.
Yeah. So he finds the Riddler is there drinking shots, and maybe the only time I can think of where seeing like a rogues gallery person just like drunk with normal alcohol, like that's not a thing you normally see, is them like in a slum bar, like just drinking away their troubles. But because he was almost killed, it's like he's really been shaken to his core, you get the impression, because like Batman wants to know, like, why did he hire you? And he's like, well, I was trying to find answers, or he said he was trying to like find out who Holiday was, but Falcone didn't like his answers. So he's like, they were gonna kill me, but they decided not to, because, you know, maybe it was just an April Fool's gag. So it's a cool little scene, I thought, of seeing a different side of one of the villains, where it wasn't Batman that beat them up and put them in Arkham, where they're like, I'll get you next time, Batman. It was like, oh, another person that uses a gun almost shot me to death. Maybe I should rethink these things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would kind of really screw with any of them, because they always kind of stay from the knowledge that Batman may stop them, but he's never going to kill them.
Right.
And so, you know, when they're finally facing down someone with a gun, you know,
they don't know what to do. They really piss themselves
with a guy.
Especially the Riddler, who I feel like Jeff Loeb here and in other places just really likes to put in situations where he's just scared out of his wits. Like he does that later with the Catwoman comic that's like a spinoff of this like era story arc, where she like makes him come along to like on some crazy adventure. So he's like her sidekick in that story, which is pretty funny. But anyway, back to this one. They're at the trial where they're going to be talking to Sal the boss Moroni. He's like the district attorney's chief witness against the Roman, who's Falcone. And he is approached by the assistant to Harvey Dent, Vernon Fields, who we've met several times as having taken bribes and working directly for the mob. And he's like, oh, you forgot your antacid for that tummy troubles you have. And he's like, yeah, that's a thing that exists and that we've talked about before. So this is the scene you've seen in, you know, anytime it's a movie or a comic or anything with the origin of Harvey Dent, where during the trial, he's grilling the suspect and he then gets the antacid turns into acid. Turns out to be acid, and it's thrown in his face, and he is screaming, and Bruce Wayne is in the audience in his looks like what his gear was in Batman Year One, before he was Batman, but he was trying to like beat up random thugs.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
His like street clothes, and he just looks ridiculous. It's like, dude, you're like 6'5" or whatever, and like one of the most recognizable people in the entire world. I don't think you're fooling anyone.
That's what the fake beard is for.
The fake beard.
Hey, wow, look, is that
John
Bruce
Lennon
Wayne
glasses? Yeah.
in a gross hat, glasses, and a fake beard? What's he doing here?
It works for Clark. Why can't it work for Bruce?
Yeah. So at the hospital, everyone is like waiting outside. You know, Gordon and their wives are there, and it's just like a very intense scene. And when the surgeon comes out, he's like, "Your husband is gone." And she's like, "No," crying. And he's like, "No, I mean, he's escaped." And all I could think of was the terrible surgeon on Arrested Development that always words things in a way that freaks everyone out.
Yeah.
That's true.
Except
That
this guy
was-
Oh, go ahead.
I'm pretty sure he uses that exact joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was exactly what I thought about it. Because you see, and I'm sure you were just about to say this, in the very last panel, the surgeon's been stabbed in the back.
Yeah. Exactly.
With a scalpel. And so, like, his last dying act was to miscommunicate something and then have to clarify.
Was to make a terrible joke. And then we switch to murder vision in black and white, where Falcone's sister is being gunned down by the Holiday Killer, where she has been breaking into Gotham City coroner's office to find all their files on trying to find connections between, I'm assuming, you know, the Falcone and the Wayne family and all that stuff, because why else would she be in they've mentioned before, like, the records have been kind of messed up. There's a file in there that's about the Holiday murders, so all the victims are in this one file cabinet. So she's trying to go to put all the pieces together, but instead gets shot. And that's the end of the issue. And it's, yeah. What did you think, Brittany?
It's a good issue. I like this issue. Because, it shows how easily they got Moroni, who showed up at Dent's office, ticked off at Falcone to take him down, and they totally got him to turn, like, immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
And then just, it's also showing that...
Well, they got his giant girlfriend to get him on their side.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you for your giant girlfriend?
Yes, I mean...
Yeah. Whomst among us has not thrown acid at a man for a girl?
How, Dent's already falling down that path. He's already going... I mean, Gilda clearly found questionable stuff in his basement. He's already following that path, even before he gets hit in the face with the acid. And so it doesn't take much to push him over the edge at that point. I also love how all that stuff is happening on Carmine's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Falcone's like, it's my birthday, and my gift to myself is destroying Dent's face.
It's like he's blowing out the candle simultaneously to Dent getting acid thrown in his face, which was a really cool framing device, I guess. It was a good framing device that made me go, ugh, acid to the face. No thanks.
Ooh, yucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that whole kind of sequence, the cutting back and forth, and then, the kind of like Moroni starts like coughing, and then he blows out the candles, as he throws the acid at him. It's, it kind of indicates like a very careful planning of each panel. He's not just, they're not just showing the story, with pictures. There is actually like very deliberate thought about how they're framing different things and what they're actually showing you. And, just like that care and effort just comes across in the book so well. And I think this is just a really good example of it. And then when he's falling on the ground and it is unfortunate that it takes place immediately after you see Bruce in his terrible beard, but the page where it's like one third of it is red, the other 2/3 are black, and you only have two panels, one of Harvey gripping his face and screaming, and the other one of like a close up on his eye. It's very, very visceral. And so this was really, really good. It was. Yeah, that kind of that scene was really excellent. So yeah, I thought it was a really good issue.
Agreed. All right.
May I also comment that Gilda is like the ultimate goth girl?
Yeah.
I mean, she's got the circles around her eyes. She's the perfect hair for it.
Always wearing black.
She's always wearing black, covered head to toe. It's great. She's like the perfect goth girl.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all. I found that fascinating.
Okay. Fair enough.
Right, that'll take us into issue 12, which is Labor Day. And we start with Harvey Dent, who's a little bit banged up. And he's currently in the sewers talking to Solomon Grundy. And he ends up reciting the Solomon Grundy rhyme to him and seemingly placating Solomon Grundy in a way. So that's a weird development. And so Gordon and
he was always so angry because he couldn't remember the rest of that damn poem. So he was like, "Thank you," and finally was able to sit back down.
yeah.
Also, I have to say, him
you.
getting smashed into the sludge on his recently acid face, like
that was super gross.
How would he not die of sepsis after this? Is my question.
I was like, he's got a poop face now.
Yep.
And so we get a bit of a confrontation between Gordon and Batman on the roof of the GCPD, where basically Batman implies that, maybe Harvey's the killer, and Gordon realizes, oh my God, Harvey is Holiday, and demands to know, how long have you known that Harvey was Holiday? And he's like, I don't believe that, he could have done it. I won't believe it. And he's like, it needs to be done. And so Batman goes to hunt down Dent and bring him in to justice. And he ends up going to see Carmine, who, he does that thing where he drops the title of the comic and he says, what we've called this past year? The Long Halloween. And then he winks at the camera. Mm-hmm. And so he basically confronts Batman and he's like, this is, part of this is your fault because, you've allowed all this to happen. And, he kind of leaves Carmine and ends up finding Catwoman, who is once again eavesdropping and spying on him. And he asks her, what are you doing? Now's not the time for your schoolgirl act. I want the truth. And she says, maybe it's because the Roman treats the world like a ball of yarn, and you know how much cats like to unravel a ball of yarn. Maybe it's because whenever he's around, you're around. Or maybe it's none of your damn business. And she backflips off a roof, which I think is just the ultimate power move.
Yeah. There's no better way to end a conversation, I guess, than to backflip off a roof.
Yeah. That's how you should end every job interview if you want to be guaranteed to get the job.
And yeah, with none of your damn business and then backflip off a roof. I also liked in the scene where he confronts Falcone, that when he's up in Batman's face, pointing his finger at him, Batman just grabs his finger and shoves him down and then disappears.
Yeah.
He's like, don't you point at me.
Yeah. I do the pointing around here.
Yeah.
And so she goes to confront Gilda and he's like, where's Harvey? You know why we have to find him. You know what's going on. And he's like, please, you gotta find Harvey. So he goes to go visit the Calendar Man, and he's like, you gotta help me find Dent. And he says he still eludes you, doesn't she? So still kind of, playing on his old trick of being completely unhelpful. And he says, just so we understand each other, the Calendar Man is being forgotten, and I can't have that. And you have something Holiday wants. So, more being confusing. And so we then get Moroni in his jail cell, and a guard and Gordon shows up, and he's like, we're going to move you now. And so they start taking Moroni through a very darkened, dank looking corridor, when suddenly Moroni takes 2 bullets to the head, and the guard suddenly lunges for the Holiday Killer, who shoots the guard a whole bunch of times, and Jim Gordon goes for his flashlight as the hat falls off the Holiday Killer and is revealed to be none other than Alberto, the son of Carmine Falcone. And that is the end of the issue.
Yep. And the guy we thought was dead.
Yeah.
Dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
So as much as I like this one, as this book as a whole, it's been so long, I totally did not remember who did what as far as who the killer was and all that stuff. So I was like, oh, that that guy. I forgot about him.
You're supposed to forget
Yeah, because
him.
it's been a minute since he's been in it, because, you know, he was supposedly shot in the back of the head and fell off a boat and died.
On Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was good. It had some interesting... I mean, it's cool that they worked in the calendar man, because I'm sure if they hadn't, people would be like, why didn't you just use him? You know? Fanboys. But, you know, it worked out well, and how upset he is about the whole situation. Like, you're totally cramping my style. It's like, we have themes for a reason. But, yeah, no, I liked this one.
Yeah, it was good. Do you want to just go straight into the next issue so that we can...
Let's bulldoze through.
So, the last chapter, chapter 13, Punishment. So it immediately starts off with Alberto. And he's like, I am Holiday.
Dun, dun, dun.
And this is Labor Day, is when this is happening. So, you know, he knows that Gallivan Man is right, and Alberto's all thinking he won, and then all of a sudden one of the guards that he thought he had shot just pops up from the ground and just, like, totally attacks him. And they get the gun away from him, and he's, like, punches him handful of times. He pulls off his mask, and it's none other than Batman.
I love that Batman was wearing his mask under a riot helmet.
I know, it's great. I don't know how he fit the ears. How did he fit the ears?
They're inflatable, I assume.
Yeah. We all know why he did that. Because Batman is possibly the most extra bitch in the whole DC universe.
Yes, this is true.
Mm-hmm, pretty much. So there's Batman standing over him in his full riot gear. And he's like, this is only the beginning. And he steps on his hand. He punches him a few more times. And then Jim stops him from doing any more damage. And they arrest him. And so then they have him in jail. And he's like, they call him Falcone. And he's like, no, it's Holiday. He is very specific. He wants to be referred to as Holiday. And his visitor is none other than his father. Who comes in, he's like, my son, he gives him hugs, and, you know, they're like, why didn't we figure it out sooner? And then Falcone is like, I can get you anything you need, any pair of glasses, what do you want? And Alberto's like, I don't need anything. And Falcone tells him, you know, if he pleads guilty to only Moroni and none of the other Holiday nonsense, then he can get him out of there. And Alberto is very offended. And he's like, do you even know when my birthday is? He's like, it falls on a holiday. Do you know which one? And of course, his father doesn't know. And it turns out it's February 14th, Valentine's Day, the day he was murdered.
So he was upset that his dad didn't get him a birthday present. He asked for an Xbox. And
his
so
birthday
he killed
present
like
to
10
himself
people.
was to kill himself.
Well, I guess it was 96. So he asked for a Super Nintendo and a Sega Genesis. And he's like, I want Mario, but Sonic is fast and blast processing, and you're the mob. You have so much money. Just give me both.
So yeah, I love the framing of the contrast here, because there's like the scene where he's like, you know, you're always working every single year, and he's like, I thought you understood. And then Alberto, it's like his face is fully in the darkness, with the exception of his eyes. His eyes are like bright behind his glasses.
Right, which is the opposite of his normal look, where it's like his eyes are the thing you can't see, because he always has those weird purple tinted glasses blocking them.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I understand. That's why you sent me away to Oxford. And he's clearly really upset that he wasn't allowed in the family business.
It's almost like he has two faces.
Almost.
What?
Because it's like every father, you know, your father before that, all of that, you know, everybody was involved in family business, but he wouldn't let him be involved. And he's clearly very offended by this.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, now I'm bigger than all of you. You know, it used to be synonymous with crime, but now it's freaks. And he's like, I am Holiday, so now he's bigger than all of them.
Which also shows the shift we were talking about earlier of like, from the mob to the freaks, in quotes, is like complete now. Like the cycle has been completed by him becoming what his dad hated.
Yeah, and I love it.
Which is a themed killer.
But I love how he says that. He's like, Gotham City's changed. It doesn't want your kind anymore.
Now he just goes around wearing like calendars that only have the holidays marked on them, making Calendar Man even more angry.
And then it goes to Gilda, and she's passing out holiday candy. And Jim and Gordon, you know, Jim Gordon and Barbara come to visit her, so she's not alone on Halloween. And she says that every time the doorbell rings, she's hoping it's Harvey, and it's not. And then it goes to Arkham Asylum, and it shows every single cell is empty. Jonathan Crane's door is open, Identity Unknown is open, Pamela Isley's open, all except for Calendar Man. Calendar Man gets left in his little glass cell, and he's like, oh. It's pretty great. And it flashes over to Roman, and he's just freaking out. He's trashing his kitchen, going on about how his son dare defy him, and how he's going to go to the grass chamber, and he could have stopped it all. And there's Sophia, and she's just watching him calmly, waiting for him to calm down. And then it flashes to outside, and you see Ivy creeping up and over and towards the guardsmen. You see the guardsmen laughing maniacally with the ha-ha-has above them. And then all the lights go out.
God, this is such a good bit.
I know, right? And so they know something's up. Something bad is happening. And it shows them they're in the halls. They come across the guards that have clearly laughed themselves to death. And they're just grinning like madmen. There's the ones that have been, scared to death with straw around them. Some of them have ivy on them. And they're like, this is bad. This is very bad. And so they break into his own office. And sure enough,
oh my God,
all it is the rogues gallery.
Oh my God, this double page spread is so good.
Mm-hmm.
So good. It's so great.
This would easily be a poster, even with the dialogue, because it's just Joker saying trick or treat, because it's Halloween again, and there's the pumpkin, the jack-o'-lantern on the ground. Mm-hmm. And Mad Hatter's like, I'm here too, guys. I have a giant gun. Don't forget, Mad Hatter. I'm a real Batman villain. Where are you going? Come back.
Was Penguin anywhere else in this comic?
No.
I don't even remember him being in it, but he's front and center in here.
Yeah, but I also appreciate that Solomon Grundy, that scene paid off from earlier with Harvey befriending him, or Two-Face.
Yeah.
Because
so now
he's like, oh, I have a friend now. He's like the Bizarro thing of me, I'm Superman best enemy. And
so one of the things I like is they all clearly overlap, where they're standing. Except for Catwoman, there is a distinct,
there's a line, and she's standing the other direction.
She's facing the other way. She has her back to the rest of them, and she has made sure there is space between her and Ivy and Scarecrow. So there is no overlapping happening there. It's one of those, I'm standing with them, but I'm really not.
Yeah.
Her body language speaks volumes.
Yeah. I think it's such a good, it's such a good spread because it really just calls back to what Alberto said, where he's like, the city doesn't want you anymore. It's changing. And it's just like this gallery of absolute weirdos and psychopaths breaking into the office of the most powerful crime lord in Gotham City and just wrecking his absolute shit is just such a representation of everything that he's saying.
Yeah.
And it's also gorgeously done.
Yeah. It's such a good payoff. Just chef's kiss. Mwah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you can see Harvey in the background, but you can't see his face. All you see is his eyes and his hair. He's completely blacked out in this initial scene. So then, of course, Carmine's like, what's this? And they're like, it needs to be done. And he's like, how long do you think I could let your family tear this city in half between good and evil? And he's like, this is my city. And that's when you get your first full face view of of Two-Face, where you could actually see the damage that was done. And it's
very grotesque Two-Face.
It is very grotesque. It's great. So, you're getting that. He's got his double-sided suit, the black on the one side, the blue on the other. He's got his coin he's flipping. He has his glove on his evil side. That's all covered up.
This suit was custom made.
Uh-huh.
Oh, hell.
He made friends with Solomon Grundy, left the sewers, went and got a custom suit made, and then went to Arkham Asylum and broke out all these people. How no one noticed, I will never understand.
If you're gonna do crimes, do them in style, I guess, right?
Well, think about it. Somebody had to make all of their suits. Mm-hmm. You're telling me that fair. These people are master seamstresses? I doubt it. Somebody had to
Spider-Man
make Joker's suit. Somebody had to make Ivy's corset. I mean, somebody had to make these things. He just went to the Rogues Gallery seamstress. That's all.
All right.
It's great.
Fine.
Which, you know, probably some poor woman that they hold at gunpoint.
Oh no, she gets paid exceedingly well. If they threaten her, she's like, "I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to make it. You're going to look like a absolute scrub doing crime.
But I'm going to make it real shoddy.
Yeah.
So it rips the first time you bend over.
Maybe she's also some sort of themed villain, but her theme is being a seamstress.
I like that. Can I be that villain?
Mm-hmm. And she has a giant, like, sewing needle on her back as her weapon.
I love this idea. So, you know, it shows him and he's talking about how it's the perfect weapon to kill him with, the .22 caliber. And I love Joker because he's like, hey, do it. And then, you know, of course, Falcone's just saying he'll burn it to the ground before he lets a freak have it. And then in drops Batman. And the first thing he does is take out Grundy. Because he knows his audience, and he's going to take the most powerful one first. I do love this, though, when he drops in on Grundy. But if you look in the background, his knee is clearly hitting Joker square in the face.
Joker takes a lot of punishment in this scene.
Oh, yeah.
He's like taking out the one, but he's using his knee to his best advantage, just nailing him in the face.
Well, he has this interesting inner monologue during this fight, how he's like, you know, all of the most powerful villains he's faced to date are in this room, so he has to take them out methodically and powerfully and quickly. So it is the only time I can think of where Batman is using, like, brass knuckles when he's fighting somebody.
Oh, look at all those poor teeth coming right out of his face.
Yeah, Joker getting punched in the face with the brass knuckles and his teeth flying out and stuff. It's, like, kind of horrifying.
Yeah, we're talking about removing the most dangerous elements first. So he landed on Grundy. He immediately just takes out Joker with brass knuckles to the face. And he's, of course, set off one of his smoke bombs. So nobody can see anything.
Yeah, he sets off like a dozen smoke bombs.
Yeah,
it's
crazy.
A
lot of them. And then he uses a net to catch, like, Penguin and Scarecrow and Ivy. Immediately catches them all. Takes out Scarecrow. And then he's like, questioningly, says Catwoman. Because, you know, of course, before it's like, she would have sided with them. And he even asks her whose side she's on. And she's like, the same side I'm always on. Which is, of course, her side. And then, you hear Harvey, he says, Batman. And he turns around, and of course, Harvey has Falcone. And he's like, he always escapes. They always escape. Well, the same problem again. And he's like, Harvey? And he's like, Harvey's gone. Two-Face is more like it, don't you think? So that's where, you know, that's where you get it. And he's officially Two-Face. Batman asks him how he's any different from the Romans. So then, of course, he's like, well, we'll do just like Justice with the flip of a coin. So he flips his coin, and sure enough, 2 shots to the head. If you ask me, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. And that's...
Damn. And you notice the blood is in color and everything else is in black and white.
Yeah, everything from that point on is just all black and white, except for the blood. And the Rogues Gallery is just completely out around him, and I love the smoke line from the gun directly goes up the middle of his face.
Right.
Yeah.
Dividing him in half.
Yeah.
Yet again.
Always divided in half. And then you have Sophia, and she's, of course, freaking out because that's her dad. And then Catwoman tries to take her out, as far as, like, making her non-threatening more. She uses her bullwhip, and she's like, it's finished, it's done. And Sophia's just freaking out. She's even telling her don't, you know, because they're in the penthouse, and they crash through the window, and she falls. And Catwoman can't catch her in time.
Also, she's 8 feet tall and ginormous, so...
Well, I mean...
I don't know if she'd have been able to hold her had she caught her.
Able to hold her. I mean, she's pretty ripped, but it might have dislocated her shoulder.
Right.
To catch her. But that's the first time it's back in color again.
Right.
In several pages.
As they're falling out of the window.
As they're falling. And so, and there you have him. He's like, you know, think of Gilda. Batman's just trying to appeal to Harvey still, telling him to appeal to think of Gilda. And for like half a second, you can see Harvey inside being like, Gilda, and then immediately is like, nice try, and smacks him in the face, and then runs away.
Yeah.
And then across town, after he escaped, he walks to Vernon's office, who is working late again. And he knows exactly what would happen. He knows Vernon gave him the stuff. He knows that Vernon's been on the other side, so he's like, well, same deal. We got a coin. Which side's it gonna be? And Batman finds Vernon shot.
Damn. R.I.P. Vernon, everyone's favorite character.
Yeah.
Yep. Batman
Classic
couldn't get to him
Batman
in
character,
time.
Vernon.
So they're back on the roof of the police station, and Harvey's like said that he killed twice, and he did what needed to be done. And Batman asks him why, and of course Harvey's like, there won't be any judges, no witness disappears, the Roman's dead, I killed him, the long Halloween is over. And basically, that he felt that was the only way to actually make it work. And Jim's like, you betrayed everything you believed in. He said, not everything. And then that's when he tells Jim to arrest him. So, and then he looks at Jim and he's like, you do know there were 2 holiday killers, right?
Damn.
Which, of course, Jim's like, what?
What?
What? And, because Alberto confessed to all of them, of course, and he's going to go to the gas chamber, but Batman's like, well, Harvey's obsessed with 2, so we won't know for sure if there was 2. And he's like, but then tonight was also Halloween. Harvey killed Roman with a 22, which makes that the last holiday murder, technically. So he's like, well, that could be that he means that he was holiday too because of that. But they'll just, they'll never know if it is or not. And he also asks him if it was worth it. Well, Batman asks Gordon if it was worth it. That promise they made. And Jim just says he won't know if it's worth it for a very long time.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Yeah. No, it's one of those, there's no way to know if it'll have been worth all of that in the end. And then you have the touching scene. You've got Jim at home with Barbara, and he's got the baby, and they're like, what are you going to do? He believes in Gotham City still, so he's just going to keep going along. And then you have Batman, who's reminiscing that he believes in Batman, that no matter what, he just has to make good on his promise.
Batman believes in himself, is the takeaway.
I have to. I believe in Batman. He's got his nasty gargoyles there. It's great. And then you have Harvey in Arkham Asylum, and all he's saying is Gilda. And then it goes to Gilda in her house, and she's packing up everything they own. And she said, do you remember you promised we would finally have time together when you didn't have so much work to do? And it's showing her, and she is burning a hat, and she's burning coats, she's burning a gun, she's burning nipples, she is
Yep.
bottle nipples.
Nice try. Burning her nipples off in this incinerator that they have in their basement.
And it shows her that she's read his case files. She thought if she left clues, then Batman would think it was somebody extraordinary and not her. That she used his coat, that she used his hat as a disguise, that she was the first one to take out Vidi, that she left the hospital while he was sleeping, and then she did it again on Christmas. And then when Alberto Falcone was shot on New Year's Eve, she noticed he came home late at night. So very clearly it was Gilda was the original Falcone, or holiday killer. Sorry. She did kill the Falcone.
I know.
And
so when you kill a Falcone, you become a Falcone.
Well, I mean, why not? Right? That's how it works, right?
That's how mobsters reproduce.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and she put together that it was also him, that he was picked up where she left off. And it was so that they could have time together. So they could have a child, so they could have their family. And that she's gonna let them think it was Alberto. And she's not gonna let anybody ever find out. Because she believes in Harvey Dent.
That's the end.
That's the end.
So, Kieran, we're dying to know how much you hated this book. No. What did you think? Let's get your final thoughts.
All right, my final thoughts. Okay. Batman The Long Halloween is unequivocally one of the best Batman stories ever written. I think I am so safe in saying that right now. I think it is probably one of the best comics I've ever read. It's if Next Wave Agents of Hate is an indication of everything terrible and wrong with comics, The Long Halloween is probably like one of the pinnacles of the form. The script is incredibly tight. The dialogue is fantastic. Any extra narration is always on point. The art is so beautiful. I mean, we talked about it 1,000 times. The art is so good. It adds to the story. It tells part of the story. It has such a great aesthetic about it. Such flawless art direction. It's such a good looking book. I mean, this is actually the third time I read it. I have actually read it before, and every time I've read it, I've always been struck by how good it looks, just how good looking this book is, and how, you know, it like you see something from it and you're like, that's The Long Halloween. Like that's like how strong visually the book is. It has such a good balance between that you know, skeevy noir kind of film gangster vibe, but also it really just incorporates the creepier and crazier aspects of the Batman mythology into it so well. And, you know, having that slow transition from this is a Batman crime comic to suddenly this is about, you know, the freaks coming into Gotham and how they're kind of throwing everything out of balance. And, you know, it tells a really good murder story, and, you know, there's crime and corruption and, you know, there's a bit of romance between, Catwoman and Batman, and they really nail the character of Bruce Wayne, and the Mother's Day and the Father's Day issues are sublime. I love them so much.
Yeah.
Just because I think highlights. They really nail the character and really touch on some of the aspects that I don't think you get in the mainstream, like Batman and you know, other kind of related comics. You know, you don't get that. Instead, you kind of get this, you know, this pastiche of Batman where he's just a hard-boiled, really gritty detective who punches guys. And it's like, no, actually, there's a lot more to him than that. And I think that's why he's such a long-standing character. But, I think that if we go to the very end of the comic, when Batman is standing on the roof and he ends with, I made a promise to my parents that I would rid the city of the evil that took their lives. No matter what that evil looks like or becomes, I believe someday I will make good on that promise. I have to. I believe in Batman. Honestly, should have ended there. I do not buy Gilda Dent being the second Holiday Killer. I thought that was a twist for the sake of a twist, and I didn't really like it. It logically, I guess, made sense, but I thought that in terms of the story, they could have just ended it there and it would have been totally fine. I felt like they kind of just added it because they felt like they had to for some reason. It just kind of, I was like, oh, okay, I guess she was also the killer, but like I didn't care about Gilda because she wasn't really in enough of the story. You know, no offense to her or anything. So up until literally the last like few pages, I was like, shit, yeah, this is just about perfect. And then those last few pages really kind of soured it for me just a little tiny bit.
I 100% agree. Like I forgot, like I said, it's been so long since I read this. I forgot who the Holiday Killers were, and that twist at the end, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that this was kind of tacked on at the end. And yeah, it feels completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And like, I get what they were going for from a storytelling perspective, but it doesn't like make me go, oh my, changes everything. It's like, no, because now he's Two-Face and the other guys confess to everything, and she's never really going to probably be in it again because now it's all going to be about Two-Face. So
yeah, exactly.
It rang a little hollow to me, but like everything up to that point was so perfect. I agree with you there. I was happy to have reread it and reaffirm that it is my favorite Batman story like ever written. And it is also, like I've said multiple times, it's my calibration point for people's like understanding of the character. And I'm sure that's Batman can mean, like, any of these characters can mean different things to different people and different writers and artists. But for me, this is pure Batman.
100%.
Like, yeah. And that's like that. Anything that can kind of like match the tone of this is the Batman I'm going to enjoy the most. Like, I'll enjoy other Batman stuff too, but this is really like the perfect blend of, mobster stuff and noir and detective work. And, it's and just the art direction. Like I've mentioned in the last episode how much they got characters like the Joker, who are like badly written, in my opinion, most of the time, because I don't think a lot of people understand the Joker as a character. Or maybe their takeaway is very different than my own. Because this is the version of the Joker that makes, like, this is what the Joker is. Like, I don't like the, like, cutting his own face off kind of, like, really out there Joker stuff. Like, that doesn't.
But it's so wild.
Like, yeah, it's like, it's so extreme. I'm like, that's not really what he's about, though. Was it funny? Did he make a pun when he did it? I mean, I don't know.
Well, Batman, we're about to face off.
Mm-hmm. Like that movie. Brittany, what did you think of your favorite comic?
It's my favorite comic. I love the crap out of this comic. So going back to like the Gilda thing, I know they say that she did it and stuff, but I'm still of the opinion that she didn't. I think it's supposed to be that she has some severe psychosis from all of this.
Okay. Interesting take.
The reason why is because if you actually go back to when these murders happen, like, with Christmas Day and Thanksgiving and all of that stuff, when they were shot, she was still in the hospital, which, I mean, she does say that she leaves while he slept, but like Christmas Day and stuff, it's like, unless she followed the Joker after he left them, which I guess is possible, she's wheelchair bound in these scenes.
Right.
So it's like, whether or not she actually could get up and do those things is still questionable. It's like, did she actually do those things, or is it just that in her mind she did? Like, is she just like,
That's her coping mechanism for having lost Harvey?
Yeah, like for having lost Harvey, and, you know, is it that she did it, or is it that he did it, and in her brain she's taking the blame to try and make it to where she doesn't feel like he's as guilty? I don't know. It's hard to say. Because it's like, she clearly is snapped with reality. Like, throughout the comic, as you go. And you see her, she's getting more goth, and but she's also, like, getting less and less, like, having less and less of a grip on reality as the comics go on. Yeah. Like, if you follow her character, it's, yeah.
I never thought of it that way. That's an interesting take. Next time I read it, I'll pay attention to that, because I know I'm going to reread it again at some point, because I always come back around. So it's a very strong recommend for the three of us. Like, if you want to get into comics and like, I want a Batman to read, this is the one to grab, I think.
This is the Batman, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like, if you've only seen the movies, this is a lot of them pull from this, which we mentioned last episode. How, like, The Dark Knight is heavily, heavily inspired by a lot of this comic. Yeah. Which actually was one of the things I had heard when they were making that movie, which made me actually, like, more interested to see it. Because the Batman Begins was like, that was fine, but I wasn't super pumped for Dark Knight until I heard that. And then I was like, oh, well, that might be really cool then. And it turned out to be amazing.
Amazing, yeah. I think that was one of the big issues that I had with the third one in that trilogy. Is it The Dark Knight Rises? Is the third one?
Something like that, yeah.
Is it like the end of The Dark Knight is very much like the end of Long Halloween? Is it like the traditional gangsters, the Carmines and the Moronis and stuff, have been royally screwed over by the arrival of freaks in Gotham City. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I was kind of expecting from The Dark Knight Rises that there would be more freaks. Mm-hmm. And instead we got like a
Bane
guy, who like planted some bombs and stuff. And I was disappointed by that movie.
Quite the downgrade is what you're saying.
Pretty much, yeah.
That was their chance to just go buck wild, and they didn't take it.
Yeah. Oh my God, right? They could have gone like so fucking crazy with that movie and just been like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do Bane, and Tom Hardy's gonna do a weird voice, but also Bane's like 9 feet tall, and he has venom pumping through his veins, and also we got some other crazy bullshit going here. It's like, no, actually, it was just assassins and stuff.
Yeah,
okay,
and he's just a dude.
He's just a dude. Yeah.
Also, it's always weird to remember that Batman Begins had Ra's al Ghul, and they just kind of wasted him. It's like such a waste of such an amazing character. Mm-hmm. Anywho, that's going to bring us to an end. So, Brittany, where can people find you online?
I am at Brittany Gregory on Twitter.
Okay. And Kieran?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Mr.K_Bennett. You can also find my Dungeons and Dragons podcast, which is for crits and giggles. That is at for CNG podcast. Jonah, where can people find you on the internet?
You can follow me on Twitter at Spambot. And that's pretty much it right now for me is this show. This is my main focus. So need more mutants, metahumans, and monsters in your life? Then check out these other Geekly Inc. shows like Transformation Sequence, Cthulhu and Friends, and Drunks and Dragons. Help us make the show the best that it can be by supporting us at patreon.com/inksandissues, where you can get bonus content, early access to episodes, and can even vote on comics for us to review. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review to help us spread the word. Interact with us on Twitter at inksandissues or on Twitch at twitch.tv/inksandissues. Now do yourself a favor and go read some gosh dang comics. Anywho, we'll be back soon with some other amazing things. If you want to know ahead of time what we're going to be reviewing, join the Patreon, patreon.com/inksandissues. And that's the only other plug I'm going to say. So with that, we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
I love you. Oh, wow.
Everyone take a drink.
Batcha.
That's kind of a running joke with our friend group of taking a drink when ending a statement to like as emphasis of making something incredibly awkward. All right. So you ready for... Sorry, I feel like I keep talking over you.
No, it's fine. That's okay.
All right. Do you have... Hey, Kieran, you look like you have something to say. Do you?
God, Logan, cut all that out. How long have we done this podcast? Like over a year now?
And tonight we actually have a pretty good connection, so I don't know what the problem is. Maybe I'm used to the like cutting out, so that's
exactly, yeah. All right, that'll take us into issue 12, Labored. Sorry, I just bumped my mic.
Labor.
Oh no!